Indeed, God did not send the Son into the world to condemn the world. God did not send Jesus to the world to condemn the world with shame and pain and punishment. God came, but in order that the world might be saved through him. Here we are on the second Sunday of Lent. In August of 2020, I remember it had been a number of months since I'd been in the building. I knew that the property committee, Bill and Bob and everybody had made sure that it was locked up tight and everything was safe. And something I needed to come check. I was probably restless. That's one of my often things. And I got my keys out and I drove over, of course, and there was nobody on the roads as we were all home. And I remember going to this door, and if any of you have had the gift of using that door, or some of our bolt doors, you know that they can be persnickety. But once you get used to them, they have this familiar sound, right? They kind of jingle, and you get, so you've got the right hip check maybe, or the right, My keys opened the door and opened in. It was so quiet in here. I made sure the alarms were quieted. Those of you know that dream. Anyway, the alarms were quieted and I turned on the lights and I walked in the door. And 3 years ago this weekend was the last time we were in this room together. Most of us weren't here. I think there were 5 of us. And when I walked in this room, Kirsten had done a thing with candles for Lent and sand, and there were dried things here. And of course, the idea was reverse, and you have them all lit, and then they gradually go out. Right here was a table with one of our silver offering plates. And in it was one single envelope. It felt like the world had stopped when Kevin and I walked out the doors that Sunday morning in March and locked the doors. And many of you, I'm sure, have stories like that. I've looked around and wondered. Nicodemus was curious. He wandered in and wanted to talk to Jesus in the middle of the night. He wanted to know, Jesus, what does all this mean? Jesus, are you real? Does this really matter? Like, why does it have to go like this? Jesus says to him, so have you been teaching the Hebrew Scripture? Like, have you read what you've been? But even Nicodemus kind of knew. Sometimes he gets a bad rap. I think we need to be a little gentle on him if we have some honesty about ourselves, at least. And he was curious. He's like, because had you ever shut down a church before? Had schools ever been shut down? I remember last night, there was an ad last night for the big basketball, the college Final Four thing. And I remember thinking when they canceled that, this is real. I've been living in the United States long enough to know the amount of money that is made by the Final Four. Like, we can spiritualize all kinds of things, but when they called that off, I'm like, this stuff is real. So Nicodemus is like, are you sure, God, you've got this? And Jesus and Jesus is like, I've told you, we keep trying to tell you that it's all about God, that it's not about all the structures. We keep telling you how to act and learn to live differently, and you just keep doing the same things over and over again, expecting different results. Some of us have heard that. That's not a direct quote from Jesus. or Scripture, although it is an old and pretty traditional quote, especially in recovering communities, and called a definition for insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, and Nicodemus is like, there might be something to that. Our world closed down. And even in 2020, we were hearing, especially those of us that are leaders in the church is dying, the church is dying, the church is dying. We hear that. I don't know if they think that that's an inspiring speech for clergy. I don't know if they think that's a way to really charge us up. And it isn't just us. In mainline Protestant traditions, we are dying. Except there are a lot of us that just don't buy it. There are a lot of us that don't buy it. So we're hearing that. It's going to die. It's going to die. So, okay, we shut down the churches. Well, that can't possibly be good news, right? If we're looking at budgets and that can't possibly be good news, but you know what? Jesus didn't have that information. That was not Jesus' paradigm. Jesus' paradigm wasn't the parochial report. It wasn't. Jesus' paradigm, he didn't care about average Sunday attendance because he knows. Anyway, I won't go down that road. Jesus wanted us to know that God is alive and well. Jesus came so that we would know that no matter what we do or where we go or what happens, that God is with us. And so the church is closed. And the school's closed. My prayers go out to all of you that have worked in hospitals and first responders. Many of us have no idea the burden that was carried. The burden that was carried by teachers. The burden that was carried by so many that we don't understand. Do you remember? I remember getting a little cart and putting all of our groceries out on the little cart because we didn't know, right? We were told maybe we were supposed to make sure that they were all rubbed down. We didn't know 3 years ago. But what did we do? We did hear the testimony that we have heard over and over again since time immemorial of people of faith. We have heard over and over again, we read and learn and inwardly digest all these stories of people that know that God isn't a building. We love our building, do not give up on our building. But it is not our building. And is there a time when we needed our faith more than ever? Is there a time when we needed to remember that it wasn't about average Sunday attendance or how beautiful is that pillar or when was that installed? We needed to know that we weren't alone. Especially those of you that lived alone. Because the world was shutting down, but we did not close. We did not close. 3 years ago, this Lent, we pivoted. We found a way to do Holy Week online. There are some of you that told me that you would never go to church on a computer. There you were. I will never learn. I can't pray online. What the heck are you talking about? I don't think I talked about it all that much, quite honestly, because I think I learned a whole lot in that time. But what was more important? It was more important that we see each other's faces. It was more important that we hear each other's voices praying together, even if it was in a little box. Remember signing in? I still miss this. I have to, let's do confession. I know that some of you will think this is absolutely nuts, but you already know I'm nuts. I kind of miss Zoom church. Because you know what it was like? It was like you signed on, and like Kirsten and you guys that come to church online get to do it. It was great. You'd sign on. Oh, hi, Tinka. Oh, good morning, Kevin. We all get to find each other's houses. We know that, Kevin always had the front door to the church in his background. We know that, don't we? We know whose houses, what they look like in the background. Weissel's have lovely wallpaper in their dining room. Carol Humphrey has this beautiful salmon color in one of the rooms in her house. I still need to find out what color that is. I would love to have the courage to paint one of my rooms that color. We know these things, but more importantly, we knew that you were okay. And when you weren't okay, you could tell us and say, we need your prayers. God was with us. God was with us. No, we couldn't receive communion, but we would sign on and hear people go, oh, hi, Charlene, how are you doing? I miss hearing that sometimes, but now I get to see you. But my point being, it was that God was with us regardless. We hear Jesus say to Nicodemus, do you not hear the testimony? Have you not heard what we've been trying to tell you? We had gotten comfortable. Because we could come to church every Sunday, we could do the same thing, we could have the same blood, we could have the same Eucharist, we could do everything the same, and we could feel like we had done church and we were good Christians and we could go home and everything was good. Even those of us that take it seriously. That was ripped out from under us. So we found ways to pray, didn't we? The church didn't close. Some of you, I had a couple of emails that said, you know, this internet thing, it's really amazing what you could find out here. And I'm like, be careful. Talk to your children. December of 2021, I think it was, Kathy had invited a friend of hers or two to come into the sanctuary and record some music for the Christmas service. I didn't think anything about it. I just kind of do my life. I'm like, yeah. I said, I'm just going to come just because I want to come out, I guess. I don't know. And so I came and I sat back there in one of the pews. I'm not a crier. I'm one of those because of my life experience that has to watch sad movies to cry. They started singing. I don't even remember what it was. I think it was Away in a Manger, but I don't even know. And I just started to cry. I hadn't heard live music for a year. Yes, her friend Katie has a lovely voice. There's no doubt about it. But it was also being here. Nicodemus says, I think you might have something to this. I think there might be something to what you're saying. But how are we supposed to do this? Jesus says, what am I supposed to do? Act it out for you? We must remember. We must remember this time. The vestry has heard me say this ad nauseum since we began this. But if we walk through this time without being changed, the opportunity, the invitation is so wasted. As we come back together, we repeatedly remember what it's like to be able to be in community. Do you remember going to visit friends or parishioners or family through a window? There's a book called Body Keeps the Score, and it's about trauma. And it's about how we know we move on and we are so good at adjusting and growing and thriving as human beings, but the body knows, right? And we react. One of the things that he says is our capacity to destroy one another is matched by our capacity to heal one another. We now see in a world, as we come out of this pandemic, are we seeing a kinder, gentler world? I hope in some places. But what we can remember and know is that God is with us. That we gather, we are church, we are a people of God, and that as we move forward, 3 years ago this month, things changed, but they didn't end. We are here. God willing, our faith is stronger than it's been in a long time. We have weary days. We have days when we wonder. But we are not alone. Kate Bowler, who some of us last year read the book, Good Enough. This year she has a podcast, and she interviewed a man named Frank Bucni. He is a New York Times columnist. He said, imagine if everybody once a month wore a sandwich board walking around. And on that sandwich board were the bullet points of things that they were either dealing with right then or had dealt with in their life. Do we think maybe we would treat each other differently? If we all walked around and were able to know, geez, that person just lost their mother. That person's recovering from addiction just recently. But for the grace of God, go on. That person just lost their job. That person just got their job. That person, fill in the blank. What would it be like if we could see each other in a different way? When we were signed in on those little boxes, we saw each other in a different way. Let us not go back to the way we were. How is it that we can be open and curious? Can we be open and curious when we heal and grow and move forward? Pope Francis is now in a wheelchair most of the time. From what we think, from what we read, it doesn't sound like perhaps he can walk on his own anymore. This week, he put out the most amazing thing, I think. I'm sure it read a lot longer than this, but I'm going to end this morning with this. Because I think if we think about Lent, I talked a couple of weeks ago about how hope isn't about something outside, it's about inside. Pope Francis says, you can have flaws. Be anxious, even be angry. But do not forget that your life is the greatest enterprise in the whole world. Only you can stop it from failing. You are appreciated, admired, and loved by so many. Remember that being happy is not a sky without a storm, or a road without accidents, or a job without effort, or a relationship without disappointments. To be happy is to stop feeling like a victim and become the author of your own fate. It's walking through deserts, but being able to find an oasis deep in the soul. It's thanking God every morning for the miracle of your life. It's kissing your children, cuddling your parents, having poetic, or I would add crazy moments with your friends, even when they hurt us. Being happy is letting the creature that lives in each of us free, joyful and simple. You have the maturity to be able to say, I've made mistakes. Check out my sandwich board. It's having the courage to say, I'm sorry. It's having the sense to say, I need you. It's having the ability to say, I love you. May your life become a garden of opportunities for happiness. That in spring, may your life become a garden of opportunity for happiness. That in spring you may be a lover of joy, and in winter, a lover of wisdom. 3 years ago today, many of the doors were locked. Our hearts are wide open, and so are our souls. 3 years later, we have much to be grateful for. We have much to heal from, but we have much knowledge that with God, all things, absolutely all things,